6. Brother Leon was getting ready to put on his show. Jerry knew the symptoms, all the guys knew them. Most of them were freshmen, had been in Leon's class only a month or so, but the teacher's pattern had already emerged. First, Leon gave them a reading assignment. Then he'd pace up and down, restless, sighing, wandering through the aisles, the blackboard pointer poised in his hand, the pointer he used either like a conductor's baton or a musketeer's sword. He'd used the tip to push around a book on a desk, or to flick a kid's necktie, scratching gently down some guy's back, poking the pointer as if he were a rubbish collector picking his way through the debris of the classroom. One day the pointer had rested on Jerry's head for a moment and then passed on. Unaccountably, Jerry had shivered, as if he had just escaped some terrible fate. Now, aware of Leon prowling ceaselessly around the classroom, Jerry kept his eyes on paper, although he didn't feel like reading. 2 more periods. He looked forward to football practice. After days of calisthenics, the coach had said that probably he'd let them use the ball this afternoon. Enough of this crap. That was Brother Leon always trying to shock, using words like crap and bull and slipping in a few dams and hells once in a while. Actually, he did shock, maybe because the words were so startling as they issued from this pale and inoffensive-looking little man. Later on, you found out that he wasn't inoffensive, of course. Now everyone looked up at Leon as that word crap echoed in a room. 10 minutes left, time enough for Leon to perform, to play one of these games. The class looked at him in a kind of horrible fascination. The brothers' glance went slowly around the room like the ray of a lighthouse sweeping a familiar coast, searching for hidden defects. Jerry felt a sense of dread and anticipation, both at the same time. "Bailey," Leon said. "Yes, Brother Leon?" Leon would pick Bailey. One of the weak kids, high honor student but shy, introverted, always reading, his eyes red-rimmed behind the glasses. "Up here," Leon said, finger beckoning. Bailey went quietly to the front of the room. Jerry could see a vein throbbing in the boy's temple. "As you know, gentlemen," Brother Leon began, addressing the class directly and ignoring Bailey completely, although the boy was standing beside him. "As you know, a certain discipline must be maintained in a school. A line must be drawn between teachers and students. We teachers would love to be one of the boys, of course, but that line of separation must remain. An invisible line, perhaps, but still there." His moist eyes gleamed. "After all, you can't see the wind, but it's there. You see its handiwork, bending the trees, stirring the leaves." As he spoke, he gestured, his arm becoming the wind, the pointer in his hand following the direction of the wind, and suddenly, without warning, striking Bailey on the cheek. The boy leaped backward in pain and surprise. "Bailey, I'm sorry," Leon said, but his voice lacked apology. Had it been an accident or another Leon's little cruelties? Now all eyes were on the stricken Bailey. Brother Leon studied him, looking at him as if he were a specimen under a microscope, as if the specimen contained the germ of some deadly disease. You had to hand it to Leon. He was a superb actor. He loved to read short stories aloud, taking all the parts, providing all the sound effects. Nobody yawned or fell asleep in Leon's class. You had to be alert every minute, just as everyone was alert now, looking at Bailey, wondering what Leon's next move would be. Under Leon's steady gaze, Bailey had stopped stroking his cheek, even though a pink welt had appeared like an evil stain spreading on his flesh. Somehow the tables were turned. Now it seemed as if Bailey had been at fault all along, that Bailey had committed an error, had stood in a wrong place at the wrong time, and had caused his own misfortune. Jerry squirmed in his chair. Leon gave him the creeps, the way he could change atmosphere in a room without even speaking a word. Bailey, Leon said, but not looking at Bailey, looking at the class as if they were all in a joke that Bailey knew nothing about. As if the class and Leon was banded together in a secret conspiracy. Yes, Brother Leon? Bailey asked, his eyes magnified behind the glasses. A pause. A pause. Bailey, Brother Leon said, why do you find it necessary to cheat? They say the hydrogen bomb makes no noise. There's only a blinding white flash that strikes cities dead. The noise comes after the flash, after the silence. That's the kind of silence that blazed in the classroom now. Bailey stood speechless, his mouth an opened wound. Is silence an admission of guilt, Bailey? Brother Leon asked, turning to the boy at last. Bailey shook his head frantically. Jerry felt his own head shaking, joining Bailey in silent denial. "Oh, Bailey," Leon sighed, his voice fluttering with sadness. "What are we going to do about you?" Turning toward the class again, buddies with them, him and the class against the cheat. "I don't cheat, Brother Leon," Bailey said, his voice a kind of squeak. "But look at the evidence, Bailey. Your marks, all A's, no less. Every test, every paper, every homework assignment. Only a genius is capable of that sort of performance. Do you claim to be a genius, Bailey?" Toying with him. I'll admit you look like one. Those glasses, that pointed chin, that wild hair. Leon leaned toward the class, tossing his own chin, awaiting the approval of laughter, everything in his manner suggesting the response of laughter from the class. And it came. They laughed. "Hey, what's going on here?" Jerry wondered, even as he laughed with them. Because Bailey did somehow look like a genius, or at least a caricature of the mad scientists in old movies. "Bailey," Brother Leon said, turning his full attention to the boy again as the laughter subsided. "Yes," Bailey replied miserably. "You haven't answered my question." He walked deliberately to the window and was suddenly observed. In the street outside, the September leaves turning brown and crisp. Bailey stood alone at the front of the class as if he was facing a firing squad. Jerry felt his cheeks getting warm, throbbing with the warmth. "Well, Bailey?" from Leon at the window, still intent on the world outside. "I don't cheat, Brother Leon," Bailey said, a surge of strength in his voice, like he was taking a last stand. "Then how do you account for all those A's?" "I don't know." Brother Leon whirled around. "Are you perfect, Bailey? All those A's, that implies perfection. Is that the answer, Bailey?" For the first time, Bailey looked at the class itself in mute appeal, like something wounded, lost, abandoned. "Only God is perfect, Bailey." Jerry's neck began to hurt, and his lungs burned. He realized he'd been holding his breath. He gulped air carefully, not waiting to move a muscle. He wished he was invisible. He wished he wasn't here in the classroom. He wanted to be out on the football field, fading back, looking for a receiver. "Do you compare yourself with God, Bailey?" "Cut it out, brother, cut it out," Jerry cried silently. "If God is perfect, and you are perfect, Bailey, does that suggest something to you?" Bailey didn't answer, eyes wide in disbelief. The class was utterly silent. Jerry could hear the hum of the electric clock. He never realized before that electric clocks hummed. The other alternative, Bailey, is that you are not perfect. And of course you're not. Leon's voice softened. I know you wouldn't consider anything so sacrilegious. That's right, Brother Leon, Bailey said, relieved. Which leaves us with only one conclusion, Leon said, his voice bright and triumphant, as if he had made an important discovery. You cheat! In that moment, Jerry hated Brother Leon. He could taste the hate in the stomach. It was acid, foul, burning. You're a cheat, Bailey, and a liar. The words like whips. You rat, Jerry thought. You bastard. A voice boomed from the rear of the classroom. Oh, let the kid alone. Leon whipped around. Who said that? His moist eyes glistened. The bell rang, ending the period. Feet scuffled as the boys pushed back their chairs, preparing to leave, to get out of that terrible place. Wait a minute, Brother Leon said softly, but heard by everyone. Nobody moves. The students settled in their chairs again. Brother Leon regarded them pityingly, shaking his head, a sad and dismal smile on his lips. You poor fools, he said. You idiots. Do you know who's the best one here, the bravest of all? He placed his hand on Bailey's shoulder. Gregory Bailey, that's who. He denied cheating. He stood up to my accusations. He stood his ground. But you, gentlemen, you sat there and enjoyed yourselves. And those of you who didn't enjoy yourselves allowed it to happen, allowed me to proceed. You turned this classroom into Nazi Germany for a few moments. Yes, someone finally protested. Oh, let the kid alone, mimicking the voice perfectly. A feeble protest, too little and too late. There was scuffling. There was scuffling in the corridors, students waiting to enter. Leon ignored the noise. He turned to Bailey, touched the top of his head with a pointer as if he were bestowing knighthood. You did it, Bailey. You did well, Bailey. I'm proud of you. You passed the biggest test of all. You were true to yourself. Bailey's chin was wobbling all over the place. Of course you don't cheat, Bailey, his voice tender and paternal. He gestured toward the class. He was a great one for gestures. Your classmates out there, they're the cheaters. They cheated you today. They're the ones who adopted you. I never did. Leon went to his desk. Dismissed, he said, his voice filled with contempt for all of them. 7. What are you doing, Emil? Archie asked, amusement in his voice. The amusement was there because it was obvious that what Emil Genza was doing. He was siphoning gas from a car, watching it flow into a glass jug. Emil giggled. He, too, was amused that Archie should have discovered him performing such an act. I'm getting my gas for a week, Emil said. The car, parked at the far end of school's parking lot, belonged to a senior by the name of Carlson. What would you do, Emil, if Carlson came along and saw you stealing his gas? Archie asked, although he knew the answer. Emil didn't bother to reply. He grinned knowingly at Archie. Carlson wouldn't do anything about it at all. He was a thin, mild kid who hated getting involved in messes. Not too many people defied Emil Genza anyway, whether they were fat or skinny, mild or not. Emil was a brute, which was kind of funny because he didn't look like a brute. He wasn't big or overly strong. In fact, he was small for a tackle on the football team, but he was an animal, and he didn't play by the rules. Not if he could help it. His small eyes were embedded in pale flesh. eyes that seldom smiled despite the giggle and the grins that sometimes flashed across his face, especially when he knew he was reaching people. That's what Emil Janza called it, reaching people. Like whistling softly in class so that it got on teachers' nerves, a barely perceptible whistle that could drive a teacher up on the wall. That's why Emil Janza reversed the unusual process. Wise guys usually sat in back. Emil didn't. He chose seats near the front where he'd be in a better position to harass the teacher. Whistling, grunting, belching, tapping his foot, stirring restlessly, sniffing. Hell, if you did that kind of stuff on the back of the room, the teacher wouldn't notice. But Emil didn't harass only teachers. He found that the world was full of willing victims, especially kids his own age. He had discovered the truth early in life. In the 4th grade, in fact, nobody wanted trouble. Nobody wanted to make trouble. Nobody wanted to show down. The knowledge was a revelation. It opened doors. You could take a kid's lunch or even his lunch money, and nothing usually happened because most kids wanted peace at any price. Of course, you have to choose your victims carefully because there were exceptions. Those who protested found that it was easier to let Emil have his way. Who wanted to get hurt? Later, Emil stumbled upon another truth, although it was hard to put into words. He found that people had a fear of being embarrassed or humiliated, of being singled out for special attention. Like in a bus, you could call out to a kid, especially one who blushes easily, and say, "Geez, you got bad breath, you know that? Don't you ever brush your teeth?" Even if the kid had the sweetest breath in the world. Or, "Did you lay a fart, kid? What a dirty thing to do." Softly but loud enough for everybody to hear. Stuff like that in the cafeteria, during lunch, and the study class. But it was better in public places, with strangers nearby, especially girls. That's when the kids squirmed. As a result, people went around being extra nice to Emil Janza, and Emil basked in the treatment. Emil was not stupid, but he was not exactly bright in class. However, he managed to squeak by. No F's, only a couple of D's, all of which satisfies his father, whom Emil regarded as stupid and whose major dream was to have his son graduate from a fancy private school like Trinity. His father didn't know how crowded the place was. "Emil, you're a beautiful person," Archie said as Emil, satisfied with the overflowing glass jug, carefully screwed the cap of the gas tank on. Emil looked up suspiciously on guard. He was never sure whether Archie Costello was serious or not. Emil never fooled around with Archie. In fact, Archie was one of the few people in the world Emil respected, maybe even feared. Archie and the Vigils. "Did you say beautiful?" Archie laughed. "I mean, Emil, you're something special. Who else would siphon gas in the middle of the day? Out in the open like this, beautiful." Emil smiled at Archie, suddenly wistful. He wished he could share with Archie some of the other stuff, but he couldn't. Somehow it was too private, but often he wanted to tell people about it, how he got a kick out of things. Or, for instance, when he went to John at school, he seldom flushed the toilet, and got a kick out of picture the next kid who'd go in and find a mess in the bowl. Crazy. And if you told anybody, it would be hard to explain. like how he sometimes felt actually horny when he roughhoused a kid or tackled a guy viciously in football and gave him an extra jab when he had him on the ground. How could you tell anybody about that? And yet he felt that Archie would understand. Birds of feather, that was it, despite the picture that haunted his life. Archie began to walk away. Hey Archie, where are you going? I don't want to be an accessory, Emil. Emil laughed. Carlson's not gonna press charges. Archie shook his head in admiration. Beautiful, he said. Hey Archie, how about the picture? Yes, Emil, how about the picture? You know what I mean. Beautiful, Archie said, walking away quickly, now wanting to keep Emil Genza's wedding about the picture. Actually, Archie hated people like Genza, even though he could admire their handiwork. People like Genza were animals, but they came in handy. Genza and the picture, like money in the bank. Emil Genza watched the departing figure of Archie Costello. Someday he'd be like Archie, cool, a member of the Vigils. Emil kicked at the rear tire of Carlson's car. Somehow he was disappointed that Carlson hadn't caught him siphoning the gas.